Hey taxpayers. Sorry this took so long to make. I got too distracted retweeting trail cams and watching Deep Rising.
Man, this water's freezing. I'm gonna catch me a cold.
I liked the part where the deep rose, but I know that was a pretty controversial statement. To most of my viewers, I am a Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube combo man. To a much smaller section of my viewers, I'm an Illustrials Brewmaster. However, there's a side of me y'all don't really get to see or hear about very often, which is my history as a Magic the Gathering player. Shout out to the readers who actually did know this, because I offhandedly mentioned it in my Blackwing primer, I think. Well, I did grow up on Yu-Gi-Oh! Watching GX and 5Ds on 4Kids. Before I ever bothered to learn how to win at Yu-Gi-Oh! Beyond the playground level, the first card game I really dug my teeth into was Magic. I was trying to convince my older brother to learn Cardfight Vanguard with me, and he agreed on the condition that I let him teach me Magic. I had just enough fun learning that I stuck around for the release of Amonkhet a few months later, and as a sucker for anything ancient Egyptian themed, that set was really what hooked me. I played a ton from the release of Amonkhet through to War of the Spark, from janked standard decks to brawl decks designed to kill myself in funny ways, ending when I got interested in fighting games. Between COVID lockdowns taking away my play areas and Arena wiping account progress leaving beta, I kind of drifted away from Magic, only really dipping my toes in the water from time to time to cube draft with my old friends or jam a pre-release when the quarantine was lifted. To be honest, in that time I had really soured on Magic, Commander especially. I spent the last 5 years devouring every bit of game design knowledge and insight I can, dwelling on my own thoughts on balance, design, and all those fun things, and the conclusion I came to was that lands just kind of aren't for me. I think it's an incredible system, just not really my thing. Couple that with some really frustrating experiences with a local Commander player, and my motivation to play Magic outside of exactly cubing with the homies was impossibly low. And then this conversation happened. I grabbed an unfinished Falco Spara deck I hastily threw together and had just enough fun that I wanted to go again, and now, a couple months later, I'm still having fun, so I want to tell you all about the experience of returning to Magic after missing one of the most pivotal periods in the game's history. What changed my perspective on Magic, and all the stuff in between worth talking about. Commander is pretty well known, even outside of the Magic spaces, so I probably don't have to explain what it is, but my viewer base is also almost exclusively Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, so just to be safe, I should probably give you all a quick rundown. Basically, Commander is a 4-player game of 100 card singleton Magic, where every deck is led by a legendary creature, or card now, apparently, I guess, that you always have access to, as kind of a 8th card in your hand, outside of your hand. And the colors of the card determines what colors the rest of your deck gets to play with. For example, if I choose to make Kumbal here my commander, since he takes black and white mana, I'm not allowed to use blue, green, or red cards. Basically what this means is you pick your favorite little guy and build a Highlander themed deck with your little guy in the extra deck. Pretty simple, right? A lot of the depth and appeal in Commander is supposed to come from political table talk, but that's also kind of the greatest myth of modern Magic. Like, yeah, sometimes you get the perfect pod where everybody has a working brain, but more often than not, you get a pod where one player makes sure the table knows they were dropped on their head through what can only be described as interpretive gameplay, another player who's fully convinced the best negotiation tactic is empty threats, and another player who knows what to do and is either shutting the fuck up to win, or desperately pleading someone else to get their head in the game and be smart. It's a really tricky dynamic and the greatest source of variance in Commander. Like, yeah, you're playing a 99 card Highlander deck, but about a third of your deck does the same thing. You can mulligan, deep draw, or tutor for your win con, so it's not too tough to make games play pretty samey. It's also kind of the reason I soured on EDH back when I actively identified as a Magic player. It's really frustrating watching bad players get incredibly petty and ruin the experience through... Hold on, how far into the video are we? Okay, cool. Dog shit table talk and a complete lack of threat assessment. Oh, wait, I'm so sorry. Oh, goodness. I just realized we've gotten this far into the video, and I haven't even introduced myself yet. Hi, I'm Bad Players. Yeah, I wasn't a great addition to Commander Pods before. Between trash decks and worse comms, it was a rough experience for basically anyone that wasn't exactly as bad as I was. But in the years since, I've grown from a stupid moron who doesn't know how to figure out who, when, or how to pressure, to a stupid moron who does know who, when, and how to pressure. And now that I'm in a playgroup of people on roughly the same wavelength and skill level as myself, it's been a blast. The social dynamic comes a lot more easily to me now. I'm a lot better at knowing when to shut up, who to pair with, and who to beat down, and all that jazz. Honestly, going back in, I half expected the social stuff would be the hardest thing to pick back up, but no, actually. My problem has been, fire design. For the non-Magic players still watching, fire design was a philosophy Wizards designers worked under that led to incredibly pushed cards, to grossly oversimplify. For specifically the Yu-Gi-Oh players watching, imagine Yu-Gi-Oh! For the Americans watching, imagine a burger. The Magic players watching may have noticed that my timeline of when I actively played lines up pretty close to the pre-fire design period, a time when Wizards designers actively powered down Standard a good deal from Battle from Zendikar over to Core 19. I was introduced to Magic through a lower power environment and lived in it up until the end, and only really saw the very start of fire cards, and didn't even get that much time with them before I basically stopped playing altogether. It's been really jarring coming back and seeing cards about as dense as Yu-Gi-Oh cards when I was so used to cards looking more like this. It's definitely a problem exacerbated by the format I'm getting back into, but it's so bizarre seeing word counts that felt reserved for planeswalkers on random rare enchantments. The game of Magic the Gathering and what cards are allowed to be and do has changed drastically from what I remember. Every time I go to a pre-release or draft nowadays, I get absolutely floored by what even lower rarity cards are allowed to do and how much of it they do too. Seeing Jewel Thief in a Nuka Penna draft was like feeding a Victorian-era child a display case of the Coca-Cola Oreos. You know, the ones with the popping candy? And don't even get me started on the lack of vanillas in Standard. Oh my god. Thank god for Ether Drift, but, you know, it's just not the same. It's also not helped by my complete lack of keyword knowledge. Trying to navigate game states with so many pieces I have to read and reread and reread again and ask what the fuck committing a crime means or what happens when I take the initiative and ask what an outlaw is and wait, is that a fucking Tarmogoyf token? What the hell? It's difficult to tell how much of it is because cards are just weirder now, or if I wouldn't be complaining if I had more time and a single response window to internalize what it means to start your engines. It's been hard, especially while juggling my own game plans. Unfortunately, I have an unhealthy addiction to doing weird shit, usually involving niche mechanics and casting spells from anywhere but my hand anytime but my turn. I sit down and after the first few slower turns of building advantage, I'm thrust into 2 or 3 comprehension checks per turn while I try to MacGyver together a win condition with a Homerid, a Sensei's Dividing Top, a grip full of counter magic, and no clue where to put any of it. It's not all bad though. The bracket system's been a relative godsend. At first, I had the very boomer reaction of, what the fuck is that? That's stupid. Why do we need it? My deck is a 7. And game changers, yeah, my opponent plays War Toll, and I changed the game to Master Duel! But I've come around on them. It's still a pinch fuzzy, but having official guidance on what a 7 actually looks like removes the awful old experience of a bunch of people over and underestimating their deck, ending up in a pod together where the only person having fun is the guy popping off and the other 3 chumps bicker about what is and isn't in line. Being able to say, my deck is a 3, it has a couple game changes and a 2-card combo is good, and the existence of Bracket 1 as a sub-format for people who don't want to play to win is a godsend. Far and away the thing about Commander culture I'll always understand least is the bizarre idea that playing to win is antithetical to Commander. It's a competitive game by design. Every action taken is to move your game plan forward, and every deck's game plan is to kill your opponents, but that's a rant for another day. If I even, make it. On the subject of Commander culture, it's been really weird seeing how much the YouTube landscape has changed during my leave. In my absence, a ton of new channels have popped up that have created a second genre of Commander video beyond the standard game nights formula and podcast that saw success back in the day. I don't want to call them video essayists, but you know the type. People like Salubrious Snail, 33 Elk, and Trinket Mage who just kind of yap for 8 to 20 minutes about some aspect of Commander with a PNG tuber and some basic graphics. I was vaguely aware of them before my adventure back into Magic because of people pointing out that my style of video and thumbnail are pretty close to Snail's, but none of these channels were really around back in the days when I was actively engaging Commander videos. It's nice to have discussion videos as part of the ecosystem that are thriving now. It's very refreshing. And I also will admit to using them as a way to find cards sometimes. I've been avoiding databases like EDHREC and set spoilers. One of my favorite things to do is attend pre-releases completely blind, and for the years I was fully out of constructed Magic, that and the occasional cube were the only ways I engaged with the game. It's a fun little test of TCG fundamentals and your ability to evaluate cards on the fly. And so when I decided to get back into Magic proper, I figured I'd extend that to constructed as well. To a reasonable extent, of course. The only ways I find cards these days are digging through bulk binders, bins, and the occasional narrow scryfall search, and of course, asking other players what they think. Has this resulted in suboptimal card choices, boomer deck building philosophy, and generally worse decks? Yes. Do I care? Nah. The boomer deck building thing is probably the biggest thing I've been hearing when people look through my decks. Between extremely 2018 card choices like Reliquary Tower and Sad Robot and everything, to deck building templates from Command Zone podcast episodes so old they feature Josh Lee Kwai begging Jimmy not to convince him to buy a Switch. You can find a lot to poke fun at in my first drafts. I watched 33 Elk's video about Commander staples that fell off, and the only time I didn't hear a card name and immediately look at a deck box sadly was Mind's Dilation. But at the end of the day, I don't particularly care. This whole journey into Magic has a message, and that's the reason why I'm telling you about it. If there was nothing to this beyond, hey guys, I play Magic now, I wouldn't bother writing a script. The best y'all would got would have been a few tweets like my misadventures with the Godzilla TCG a bit ago. To get to the point, the reason my journey back into Magic is notable is because it made me fully realize the single most important lesson possibly ever for someone in my position. Magic the Gathering is a game you play with your friends. It's a really stupid thing to say out loud, but when it comes to games where your goal is to defeat an opponent, or in this case, 3, it's easy to get lost in that win condition and forget that Magic doesn't have to be a purely competitive experience. I'm not saying you should stop playing to win. In fact, I actively encourage people to do so. Just that it's possible to mentally separate losing and feeling bad. When losing stops being seen as failure, Magic can truly shine as both a competitive outlet and, much more importantly, a vehicle to spend time with your friends. I've played a good amount of Commander since coming back, but the most memorable parts of every game has next to nothing to do with the gameplay. It's always stupid riffs with my homies or dumb jabs we took at each other. For every sick outplay I get, like stifling a famished world sire, I have about a dozen more stories centered entirely around some dumbass bit that I run with my friends, and that rules. Alright, see ya.